Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I'm a nerd. And a little secret about these virtual user group meetings, Mary Jo and Dan and Leanne and I go to lunch right before them. And I don't normally eat lunch, so I get very tired. And it's all I can do to keep awake. If it weren't for these exciting topics that we're talking about, I don't know what I would do. And today, you're kind of getting 2 for 1, or should we say 4 for the price of 2, because today we have 4 topics plus a special, not sneak peek, but just mention of something that's going on. Today we're going to talk about marking multiple calendar items, or tasks, I should say, complete. We're going to talk about negative positive zeros, which is kind of a problem with an allocation with payment that we're going to show you how to correct, or at least discuss the theory behind correcting. We're going to talk about putting a credit card remittance form on a cover sheet, not just on the bill itself, but on the cover statement if you happen to be producing cover statements for multiple matters for the same client. And we're going to tell you about a little problem that SGI introduced and then fixed in the way calendar records are linked and how we can avoid that problem, creating problems for you. Okay, I'm going to wake up, but before we do any of that, we're going to do the old housekeeping thing. Now, if you were at a CLE seminar, they'd tell you where the bathrooms are, but hopefully you know where your bathrooms are. So I will merely tell you that over on the side of your screen is something that looks a little like this. It's basically your GoToWebinar control panel. And you've got a big box and then a little box that juts off to the side. You don't have this stuff up here. This is actually a picture. Oops. Oh, that looks terrible. This is actually a picture file, so you don't have this header stuff. But these buttons here control some things you can do, and this one here will slide the control panel out of the way. You'll notice it looks like arrows that point to the right. If you click it, this big control panel will slide out of the way, and this will actually change to arrows that point to the left. And that means you can slide the control panel back into place if you want to type a question, and that's where you do it right there. The questions section, you can ask any question you want at any time, and we will answer them. If you're feeling a little more bold, you can also raise your hand by clicking this button that looks like a hand with an up arrow in front of it. That means you're raising your hand, and if you do that, you don't have to type your question, because what we'll do is we'll unmute you and ask you what your question is, and then you'll be able to go ahead and get it answered. We'll make sure it's answered, and then we'll mute you again so you can continue eating lunch. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to Mary Jo, who is going to talk about marking multiple items complete in Practice Master.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a little more awake than Paul, I hope. But anyway, we are going to talk about when you go into your task list, sometimes you have multiple items that are old. They might be from 2007. You know they're done, and you just want to clear them out, and you don't want to have to sit there and click each individual task to get them off the list. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can go in and you can mark those complete in a group instead of just one at a time. The first way is if you actually know who the client is, you can go into that client. You can go under the calendar tab. Right now I'm in Jimmy Johnson, and we're going to go over to the calendar tab, and I've got a couple of tasks here. So I could actually highlight them both, group, and I could mark them complete over here in my quick clicks. And if I click that, they'll both be marked complete and they fall off the list. So I could order this column here by the due date, and then I could highlight those old entries and get them out of there. Now, a lot of times it's not such a neat and pretty little thing. You've got calendar entries for all different clients, and they're in random order, and you don't want to have to try to figure out which client it is for each group. So what you can do is go into the calendar file, and you can mark them by date that way as well. So I'm going to go up to my file, open, and then you can go to the calendar file here, or another shortcut that you can get there is if you click on the calendar tab, there's a little icon right here for the calendar file. So either way gets you into the calendar file, and I've got a list of all of the calendar records that are out there. I can then sort this column by the due date, or I could do it by the username, and then I can get those old entries up to the top of my list. And again, I can highlight them in a group, and I can just come over and mark them completed. You can also hit your control key, and you can highlight just select records. So if they aren't in a row, you can go in and you can do that, and you can mark those tasks complete. You also see that we've got a type column here, so you've got the T's for tasks and the E's for events, so you could sort by that. Whatever is the easiest for you to get those grouped up in a way that you can highlight or hit control and mark them complete all at once. There's also filters. So you could actually build a filter that said that the due date is from this range to this range, and the type is task, and the user is yourself. And that way you would just see those entries on there, and you can just mark them all and mark complete over here. So that's a way that you can get all those old tasks and things that you want, that you know are done, off your list and clean it up. So I'm going to send it back to Paul. Is there any questions on that before I do?
No questions, Mary Jo.
Okay, I'm going to send it back to Paul, and he's going to tell you how to clean up your AR.
Well, I can't get people to pay you, but there is a problem that people that were using the software before version 14 came out might be experiencing and might not even know that they have it as a problem, and then all of a sudden one day it'll crop up. We call them negative positive zeros. In the old days, prior to version 14, if you were integrating with General Ledger, you had to make your fee and your cost payment entries separately in tabs. So if somebody sent you a check for $1,100 and $100 was for an advance and the rest was for legal fees, you would have to create a $1,000 fee payment entry and a $100 expense payment entry. A little hokey. Of course, it's all been fixed in version 14 and prior and subsequent. Now we have very, very tight, very clean integration with General Ledger that doesn't require anything like that. But that's the way it used to be done. And what that means is that there was a great potential for misapplying things. Maybe you accidentally just entered that $1,100 payment as a fee payment and didn't break it down as $100 for costs and $1,000 for fees. That would create the situation that we're talking about. And I'm going to show you, first off, how to find out if you have this problem. What you want to do is go into your Reports tab, click on AR, do a detail AR report, and you want to be sure to run it to include zero balance clients. When you do that, I'm going to display mine to the screen. As you can see, nobody owes our firm money. Of course, we're not a real firm. And this, well, no, we do have a $55 balance. I stand corrected, 65. I don't have any of these, but I want to show you how to get in here. And I've actually taken a little snippet of data from a client where I didn't include any of the client information or who their clients were. And I know it's a little hard to read, but what you end up with is something like a negative $29.10 in the fee column and a positive $29.10 in the expense column. And you end up with that being a zero balance. We call these negative positive zeros. Something was misapplied, so you've got a negative fee balance and a positive expense balance that when put together make it equal zero. But you still have these two balances out there that wreak havoc on your AR, that make your unallocated payments report show all sorts of weird stuff. And a lot of times people say, well, these are clients that are gone. Well, the thing is, if they're not, this is going to rear its ugly head if you try to add more time for a situation like this, because all of a sudden you'll show, a negative fee balance that's going to affect the time that you're entering, and a positive expense balance that's going to affect the expenses you're entering, and give some really wacky totals and some really wacky stuff. Now, when you're in this report, you may notice that when I took the screenshot, I was highlighting the F, the space between, and the negative. If you pull up this report, and when you do it, you won't get 2 pages like I did. And one other thing you want to do when you run this is you want to go to sort and say none, so you don't get it broken down by primary timekeeper, and now I'll only get 1 page. But when you do this, you probably will have hundreds of pages, if not thousands. The client that I snuck on to this morning and grabbed that little snippet so you could see when I printed their AR, detail AR with zero balances included, it was something like 1,500 pages long. So what you're thinking is, how in the heck am I ever going to find all these situations where I've got that red number, that red lettering there? That's the key. Look for this red. But the way to find it is to go to search and to search for S space dash. Because if you have a negative, one of them is going to be in this 0 to 30 column because the negative it thinks is actually current. It's not past due. The positive amount's going to show over here in one of these columns because it is past due according to the system, but a negative amount can never be past due, so it's always going to show over in the 0 to 30. So if you search for S space dash, that's what you're looking for, and you will find these sorts of occurrences. So you type in S space dash, you look for the first one right here, and then you make a note of who it is, you go to next, make a note, you go to next, make a note, or you just switch back and forth and fix them while you're doing it, okay? Now, you don't have to do this, but it will affect you at some point. And if you really never had anything prior to version 14, you are not going to have this problem. One of the things I wanted to point out was that in the virtual user group announcement that we sent out, I mentioned in the text that this was still a problem for people, that they could still be entering the payments in such a way that it would cause this to happen. And we discovered this morning when we were trying to reproduce this, you actually cannot do this anymore. We tried to set up our data to show this negative, positive 16. What are you telling me, Mary Jo?
I'm trying to tell them that we tested this in 16, and we know we can't do this or recreate this in 16, but you may still be able to do this in 14 or 15.
She's over here writing 14, 15, 16, and she's pointing furiously, and I didn't know what she was talking about. She's correct. We tested this morning in version 16. You may have 14 or 15. We did not test it there. You may still be able to create this problem if you happen to be one of those people that's always entered your payments as fee and expense as separate payments, okay? Now, how do you fix it? Well, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not that hard. I'm just going to explain the theory. If anybody has this problem and wants a more detailed explanation, I want you to email me, and we will actually help you, at least give you the detailed explanation without charging you for our time. But here's what you do. In this example, we have a negative 2910 in fees and a positive 2910 in expenses. So we create two transaction codes, a cost accounting adjustment code and a fee accounting adjustment code. And we give them descriptions just like that so we know what they're for. We go in and we pick a date when we know we're not going to really have transactions. My favorite is Christmas Day, Easter Sunday, days when you know that you're not going to have a bill, you're not going to have a transaction, no attorneys are going to be logging time. You create a fee entry that is the exact opposite of what you have here for the client in question, who would show over here, but I've blocked that out. So you create a fee entry for positive 2910 on that date, an expense entry for negative 2910, basically the exact opposite of what's here. You then print a final bill for that client on that date showing only fees and expenses for that date range. What I mean is that you go into generate statements, however you do it, whether you do it with the shortcut that we taught you months or years ago in the client manager, or you do it here, and you say, I only want fees from this special date through that special date. I only want expenses and advances from that special date through that special date. So if it was Christmas of last year, it would be 12/25/11 through 12/25/11, 12/25/11 through 12/25/11, and you wouldn't even include payments. You give it a date of 12/25/11, you make it final, you display it to your screen, and you update that client. To summarize, you make in this example, a positive 2910 fee entry, a negative 2910 expense entry, both with 12/25/11 as the date. You go into generate statements, you do your fees, expenses, and advances for that date only. All four of these fields should have that date. This should be unchecked. You give it a statement date of that special date, 12/25/11. You make it final. You say okay. You display it to the screen. You do not have to print it out, although a lot of people do print it just so they kind of have a history of what they've done, something that they can kind of staple together and put in a file somewhere in case they ever need to know. And then finally, you update the statement. Okay? So to summarize, you're going to see these on a detail AR. You can get that by going to the Reports tab, doing AR reports, doing Detail AR. You need to make sure that you tell it to include zero balance, and you probably want to tell it no sort sequence. You get that report. You find these problem entries by using search and searching for S space dash. I don't have any, but if you go to first, you'd find it. If you go to next, you'd find the next, 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 next. However you need to do that, you make a list of those ones that need to be corrected and what the amounts are, negative whatever in fees, positive whatever in expenses. Sometimes it'll be the opposite. You'll have a negative amount in expenses and positive amount over here in fees. Whatever it is, you have to note it, and then you have to go through that fake final bill sequence, get it adjusted, get it updated, and you'll be done. A bit of work. We have some clients that have hundreds of these, but it's well worth it, because until you figure out what's going on, and you may already have this happening, and you may already be experiencing some of the side effects, the strange numbers on unallocated payments reports, the strange situation when you try to go to bill somebody that's got this as a situation. This is the way to get rid of them. Okay? Any questions, Leanne?
Yes, Paul.
What do we got?
Kathy wants to know, can't you get the same result by just zero billing the statement without making the additional entry?
Zero billing the statement. I'm not sure what she means by zero billing the statement. Did she type that in?
She did.
We don't want to just unmute her because she may be eating a very particularly noisy lunch. Kathy, I'm not quite sure what you mean when you say zero billing. So Mary Jo's making a note. And if you will, Kathy, email me or Mary Jo, paul.purdue, like the school, not the chicken, P-U-R-D-U-E, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com, and just ask that question again. Give me a little more detail on what you mean by zero billing, and we'll get that question answered. Any other questions, Leanne?
Yes. Next question from Elena. She would like to know, why do we use a date that won't be used for billing?
Really, it's just a great way to make sure that when you do go to print the final bill, that you're really is just being used as an adjusting entry, that you won't include any other fee transactions that may be in there for that date. So your goal is to print a final bill that has this one adjusting entry on the negative side and the one adjusting entry on the positive side, and nothing else. So if you were to pick, last Tuesday, and you do this, there's a good chance that somebody billed time against that matter last Tuesday. So that's why I say Christmas or Easter on a year prior. You really want to get it out of your current year. You really want to get it into a situation where you can really zero in on those two transactions you made and none else. And I see Mary Jo
I'm going to just
clicking
add
in.
to that just a little bit, because I'm sure you're probably thinking, what if it's a closed client and there isn't any time? What difference does it make? And I like to do it on a special date anyway, just in case I ever had to go back and search or, reprint it for whatever reason, or maybe I updated, I didn't want to, I didn't fix it correctly, I need to go find it again. And if I'm doing it on random dates that I just happen to be, I did 10 today and I do 10 tomorrow and I do 10 the next day, I can't go back and just easily find that. So when you're using that one specific date, it just kind of helps you locate that as well.
Good point. Very good. Okay, more questions, Leanne?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. We didn't hear back from Kathy?
No.
Okay, she'll probably email me. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it back over to Mary Jo, who is now going to talk about credit card remittance forms on the cover statement.
Okay. Some of you have added a credit card remittance to the bottom of your statements, and some people like to see that on the very first page, and some people have asked about seeing it on the last page. The problem is when you put it on page 2, if you have 3 pages or 4 pages or 10 pages on your statement, you're going to see that credit card remittance on every page after page 2. It'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And, you don't really need that on every single page, so it doesn't really give you a lot of choices there. So if you're putting it on the first page, no problem. If you're putting it on the last page, it can run into issues. So another option that people may not know is that you can include that credit card remittance at the bottom of the cover statement. And if you put it there, it's only going to show on that cover statement page, which is usually only 1 page. It could be longer, but most of the time it's 1. And you don't have to worry about all those subsequent pages, or if you didn't want it on the very first page of the statement, it's already on the cover statement. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to go under Statements, Statement Setup, and we have Statement Designer. And some of you may not have ever been in here, but we have all kinds of different sample layouts and things that come with the program. And if I'm in firm information, you can see that I've got just a standard firm statement heading up here. And we have all kinds of different headings that come out of the box. And the credit card remittance is right here as a sample. So if I scroll down, I can see that here's one that's at the bottom. And I can just lasso it, copy the whole thing, and I can put it into any layout that I'm using. Or if you're just using the cover statement template, you can put it in here, or you can create your own groups. If you don't want to use any of these samples and you want to create your own, we've got one in here for ACS invoices, I can go into here, look at the different pages. I'll have a page 1, page 2, cover statement, envelope, and I can use anything I want in here. I can create my own where we can import images or, different, we can make it look like your letterhead, whatever you want there for your page 1, your page 2, etc. But with the cover statement, if I'm using my own specialized template, I can come into the credit card remittance, lasso and copy it, and then I can paste it into my cover statement here down at the bottom. And if I just paste it in, and I can move my little end of my page up above it so that it's going to show at the very bottom of my page. And these are all modifiable. If you don't take American Express, then I can highlight the box or shift and hit those, and I can delete those boxes here with my trash can and take it off of there. If you take a different kind of card, you can put that in there. Whatever you want to do, you can change these layouts to whatever you want to see. Now, this isn't just available on the cover statement. It's on any of the pages. So if you happen to like the firm info heading over here and you want to put it on your layout, you can copy and paste that onto your layout. After you've done this, you then need to assign it to the templates that you use. This is one design that you can make. You can create as many groups as you want, so you might have a group that includes the credit card remittance and then another group that does not. And as long as you assign it to a template, once we get done, we save that, and then we can come out to our templates, and I'm not going to save it in here, but on your actual templates, you can come in and choose what templates you're using. Maybe you have several different templates in here. You might be using the standard STI, or maybe you've come up with some of your own. And on these templates, once you've chosen that, you have the Layout tab. And I can just make sure for the cover statement that I'm using that ACS cover statement that would have the credit card remittance on it. So this is the key to getting it to be attached to a certain template. And then the final step is to make sure that this template is assigned to the client, because you can assign different templates to each individual matter. So once you've created that cover statement with that credit card remittance, you still have a few more steps to do to make sure that it does appear on that client statement. But it is very easy to do once you're in the Statement Designer to add that to the bottom of the statement. If you do like it on that page 1, it's just as easy. You can go down to your page 1 and just, again, copy and paste it down to the bottom of the page 1. So that's what I have with adding credit card remittance to the bottom of your statements. Do you have any questions or anything to add, Paul?
I always have something to add. I thought you knew better than to ask that. Leanne, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Well, here we are, 25 minutes in, and we have 5 minutes left, and I've got 5 minutes worth of stuff to talk about. STI, when they released version 16, actually after version 16 and the subsequent release that you would have had to have downloaded, or if we installed your 16, we would have downloaded the latest copy. They did something really stupid, not to mince words or anything, but they took and put in this thing called keep linked. It used to be that if you had a calendar entry and it was assigned to 2 people, this one's only assigned to 1 right now, but you could have it assigned to multiple. And then you made a change to it. When you went to save it, it'd say, hey, do you still want to keep this linked? In other words, do you still want Paul's calendar version of this calendar record linked with Mary Jo's, so that if changes are made, they'll still be linked up? And you'd say yes, because you always really want your entries linked. There aren't very many instances I can really think of where you would have multiple people on the same calendar entry, and you wouldn't want those calendar entries for those multiple people linked together into one unit, if you will. STI introduced this, they got rid of the question because people got confused by that, and instead they put in this checkbox, which is fine. It means that they just have a different way of representing it. But they made it so that if you pulled up an entry that was only assigned to one person and you wanted to assign somebody else, like Mary Jo, you were creating entries that were not linked. This was defaulting, when that happened, to not being checked, which in my mind is really, really stupid. Now, in my mind, it's really, really stupid because we have this thing called the ticketing system, and we have a special user called project. And so all of our, when I come to your site and I make a list of things that need to be done, they all go into your client in the ticketing system under the user project. That's how we keep them in our ticketing system, so to speak. And then I look at those things later, and I say, well, Mary Jo can do this, and I put her name on there, and all of a sudden I'm creating two totally unlinked entries. An example of this in your firm might be that, well, you've got an attorney that's the primary attorney for a case, so he has an entry, a pretrial that he's going to attend. But he decides to send the associate attorney, Bob. So you come in here and add Bob's name to this calendar entry, and all of a sudden you've created two totally unrelated entries for the same thing, one for the primary attorney, one for Bob. When in fact what you really want to do is make sure they stay linked. Well, STI has fixed this in their latest release that you can get right now by going into Help and Internet Resources and Software Update and following the instructions, or this is something that if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can have Mary Jo do, and she can usually do it in a matter of minutes and not charge you very much money. But the point is, if you get that latest release, when you pull up an entry, I'm going to get out of here real quick, when you pull up an entry that didn't have more than one person assigned to it, now this checkbox will remain checked even though you only have one person to begin with. So that means if you really do want this entry to be unlinked with the additional people that are in it, you have to uncheck that box. Doesn't seem like much of a change, but around here it's going to be huge, and I know a lot of clients have had this problem where they all of a sudden have entries that are no longer linked, and it's creating issues for them. So something to be aware of, something to understand is out there, and even if you don't have the release, it's good to know that that this is going to be a problem for you if you try to pull up an entry that's assigned to just one person and assign somebody else. Okay? Now, one more thing. We have a client that is deals with foreclosures and has a lot of small banks that they deal with, and they needed something called a portal to report information to their clients about the status of their cases and the status of the litigations that were going on for those small banks. We had a company called Proximity develop that portal for this client, and now Proximity has structured their agreement with this client in such a way that now they can offer this as a product. What that means is that if you are interested in taking information from Practice Master and displaying it on the web in a secure environment that your clients can be given a user access to with a login name and a password, they can go in and look at specific information from your Practice Master system. Any information that's definable. In other words, not everything would be viewable to them. It's based on reports, actually, that we would write or that you would write. If that interests you, if the thought of being able to take information from your Practice Master and have it accessible by your clients for viewing 24/7, then you might want to know that we are going to be giving a seminar, or a webinar, I should say, to kind of introduce this concept and to get you familiar with this product that Proximity is offering called the Client Matter Access Portal. So if that is something that interests you, just keep an eye on your email box. Sometime this week, I am guessing, we will be sending an announcement of that webinar. It'll probably be within a week or two of being announced, so keep an eye out for that. It'll be very short, 20 to 30 minutes, but it'll give you a complete picture of how that'll work. And Leanne, do we have any questions that are lingering back there?
No, we do not.
No, we do not. Okay, well, that does it for today. So I'm going to put on my pajama pants, and Mary Jo and Leanne are cringing at that thought. And we are going to go back to work. You do the same, and we will see you next month.
Hold on. I think I have a hand raised.
Oh, my gosh. Talk about being...
It must be the pajama pants.
Yeah, it's probably... Is it my brother?
No, this is Todd.
Okay.
Todd, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, we're wondering if there's a difference in between Practice Master and tabs when we're doing conflicts checks. It appears that when we do conflicts checks in Practice Master, that more information shows up than when we do conflicts checks in tabs.
That's absolutely true. Let me go here. I'm going to start a conflict check. I'm in Practice Master right now, and I am able to search all these files. This client file that I'm searching in Practice Master includes all the additional fields that may have been added for Practice Master that aren't in tabs. Obviously, the fee and cost file are going to be the same, but the AOP files and the contact file, and especially the journal and the calendar files and these documents, these are all things that are not in tabs. We recommend wholeheartedly that people, if they have the option to do it in Practice Master, because some people don't use Practice Master, but if they do, that's the place to do it. It's
okay,
fast.
Thank you.
Yep. It's also faster, by the way. In Practice Master, it's indexed in such a way that it'll be much, much quicker than tabs. So you're absolutely right. It's much more thorough in Practice Master. Okay.
There's nothing that would show up in tabs that wouldn't show up in a Practice Master conflicts check.
That's correct. Okay. There is nothing. Well, there is one thing, and that's archive fee transactions. When you sync with Practice Master and tabs, let me get out of here. When you sync, Mary Jo, take me to the right place. Integration, let go. And there we go. Yeah. Yeah, get out of that. I think you have to go all the way out. Oh, here. There's something in there that allows you to take tabs for your archive records from the fee and cost and convert them to be in Practice Master. If you do not do this, which most people don't because the default is not to, then your fee archive and cost archive transactions are not going to be in Practice Master. Now, most of the time, the things that people happen to be picking up from those fee archive records are things that are going to be in Practice Master anyways, like who's the opposing counsel that you talked to, or what's the name of the spouse in a divorce case. That would undoubtedly show up in a fee entry, but it's probably also going to show up in Practice Master if you're using Practice Master to keep track of that information. So that is one thing, archive transactions from both the fee and cost file, if you don't have this checked when you do your syncing.
Thank you.
Okay. And Leanne, no more questions?
No.
Okay, so now it is officially at an end. We will see everyone next week. Everybody have a good day. Bye-bye.